Good day, students. For our lesson for today, we will just have a very quick discussion of our last two topics for the second quarter. The first one is the types of pronouns. Before we proceed on discussing the different kinds of pronouns, or maybe you have somehow initial knowledge about what is the definition of pronouns, what are the types of pronouns, what are the kind of pronouns that falls under each type. But for the benefit of those who could not remember, let us have a quick review first. When we're talking about pronoun, it is being used as a replacement or an alternative to avoid the repetition of the same words. For example, instead of if you're writing an essay and you're always using a specific noun, for example, John loves to eat, John loves to cook, John loves to play basketball, and so on and so forth. If you're repeating the noun John throughout your essay, it would sound repetitive or it would bore your readers. And that is where the usage of a pronoun takes place. Again, when we're talking about pronoun, this is being used to replace a specific noun to avoid repetition of that specific noun. Now, there are there are eight kinds of pronouns. The following are personal, possessive, relative, demonstrative, indefinite, reflexive, intensive, and interrogative. So we will now discuss the differences between these kinds of pronouns. Let's start with personal pronouns. When we're talking about personal pronouns, these are pronouns that is being used on you are pertaining to a person or an object. So personal pronouns is divided into two usage. Personal pronouns used as subject and personal pronouns used as object. When we're talking about subject, you are it refers to the noun or the noun that you're being used or the noun that you're being replaced to that pronoun is the doer of the action. While on the other hand, personal pronouns used as object, the noun being replaced here is it is the receiver of the action. Again, subject, personal pronouns used as subject. At the first, it is being used the nouns that is being nouns. While personal pronouns used as object refers to the receiver of the action. For example, I love you. That is an example of personal pronouns used as subject because the pronouns being used here is the word I, which refers that the noun that is being used here is the doer of the action. On the other hand, think about us today and always. The pronoun here is us, which falls under personal pronouns used as object, where the word us is the receiver of the action or the verb think. If you have questions regarding personal pronouns, don't hesitate to send me a message. Second one is possessive pronouns. When we're talking about possessive pronouns, these are kind of pronouns that shows ownership or possession, which means that you are claiming or that per individual claims that this specific subject or object is theirs or it's their own possession. For example, the pronouns under possessive pronouns are the following: my, mine, his, her or hers, its, their or theirs, and your or yours. For example, those ideas are hers. So the word ideas, those ideas are being possessed or being owned by the pronoun hers. That is for possessive pronouns. Next one is what we call relative pronouns. When we're talking about relative pronouns, it links relative clauses to independent clauses. If you could recall that in a sentence, there is an instances where a sentence is composed of a independent and dependent clause. When we're talking about independent clause, the thought here is complete. There is a subject, there's or the noun, there's a verb. On the other hand, the dependent clause is it lacks on either the subject or the noun, the verb or the action being done by the noun, or it lacks both. So there are instances that relative pronouns, the main purpose of them is to connect or to link the dependent and the independent clause. Let's see on the example. He leads by good example, which serves as inspiration to many people. As you can see, the relative pronoun that is being used here is the pronoun which connects the two separate sentences. The first one is he leads by good example, which is an example of an independent clause because there is a subject or the noun which is the pronoun he, and the verb is the word leads. On the other hand, serves as inspiration to many people is the dependent clause because there is the verb serves. However, there is no noun or there is no subject that indicates who is the doer of the action. So that is the purpose of relative pronouns, to connect the dependent and independent clause. Number 4 is what we call demonstrative. When we're talking about demonstrative in Tagalog, in demonstrative, you are pointing at something or someone that is far from where you standing. So para kang meron kang tinuturo na malayo, na hindi siya malapit sa iyo. So when we're talking about demonstrative pronoun, it is divided again to two. The first one is the singular. So if you are pointing to a single thing, or it could count as one. On the other hand, when the demonstrative pronoun is plural, or you are pointing to more than two or two and above things. So for example, that is an interesting suggestion. So the interesting suggestion is an abstract concept, or it is not physical, so it could be pointed out. However, the number of interesting suggestion here is only one, or a single object, which calls the usage of singular demonstrative pronoun, which is the word that. So that is for demonstrative pronoun. Number 5 is indefinite. When we're talking about indefinite, it refers to something that is not identified specifically. So it is kind of different from the previous types of pronoun, because in indefinite pronoun, these are pronouns that has no exact number. We are not sure, or we are not confident on how many is the subject or the object or the one that performs the action. The examples of pronouns under indefinite pronouns are the following: none, one, nobody, everyone, anybody, and some. For example, anyone can be a good leader if one is compassionate and hardworking. So the pronoun being used here is the word anyone, because it says us that the number of the object that's being pertained, that has the possibility to be a good leader, is uncertain, or there is no specific number that we could use to identify how many object or subjects is being pertained in the sentence. And that is for indefinite pronoun. Number 6 is intensive. When we're talking about intensive pronoun, this is being used to emphasize the antecedent. For example, myself, yourself, yourselves, himself, herself, itself, themselves, ourselves. The thing that we should remember when we're talking about intensive pronoun is that they are being only used to emphasize, or to give intensity, to emphasize that the doer of the action is the receiver of the action itself. For example, it was Hannah herself who managed the conflict of the group, or the doer of the action. So the usage of the intensive pronoun here is to emphasize that the doer of the action is Hannah herself alone. So that is for intensive pronoun. Number 7 is interrogative. When we're talking about interrogative pronoun, it is used in questions like who, what, which, whose. So the nature of interrogative pronouns is more about questions, or you're asking a specific question. For example, who is responsible for this mess? So the pronoun that is being used here is the word who, which is in interrogative manner. And now that is the seven types of pronoun. It is not 8. Apologies. Again, the 7 types of pronouns is interrogative, intensive, indefinite, demonstrative, relative, possessive, and personal pronouns. Be aware of these kind of pronouns because it is included on your exam. And now let us proceed to the second topic that we had for today. It is somehow short and it does not need further understanding because it is kind of difficult. It is in-text citations and reference list. Now, when we're talking about in-text citations and reference lists, you will encounter them when you entered senior high school and college. The main reason why we are doing in-text citations is that we are writing this kind of way is to avoid plagiarism or to avoid stealing other people's ideas and works and giving credit to the author that we use. Because in a research or in a book, even your book, it uses references because there is no possibility that you could create a book alone, or except of writing novels and such. However, if it is concerns on education or more on a specific field, you should acknowledge or you should get ideas from the existing works of others with giving them credit. So, like what I said a while ago, this is usually done in academic setting for the production of research journals or dissertations are required to students. So that is the purpose of writing in-text citations and reference list. Now, let's have a further discussion on the two. First is in-text citation. When we're talking about in-text citations, these are typically found inside the research or the main body of the research. It is divided into two. There are two kinds of in-text citations. First is you will place the last name of the author outside of a parenthesis, and inside of the parenthesis is the year of the book's publication, or when is the book published or created. For example, Padilla 2023. So you will only use the last name, and that is for the first type of in-text citation. The second type is you will place the last name of the author and the year of its publication inside the parenthesis. For example, as you can see, Escarda 2023, it is enclosed in open and close parenthesis. So that is the two types of in-text citation. On the other hand, this is somehow tricky or somehow long on the reference list. A reference list is somehow found at the very end or the last part of your book. So even though your workbook, there is a reference list, and mostly reference list is arranged in alphabetical order. So there are two types of reference list. The first one is for printed sources or the physical copies of books. So in printed sources, the format is follows. Last name first, comma, initials of the author's first name. So instead of writing the first name of the author, you will write down the initials of the author. Then period, year of publication, open and close parenthesis, period, title of the book. There are instances where the title of the book here can be italicized or sometimes it is not. And then followed by a period and place and publisher. The part of place and publisher, it should not be italicized. So ang italicized lamang dito ay yung title of the book. For example, as you can see dun sa example po, nauna po ang apelyido, Rowling, then comma, initials of author's first name which is J.K. Then period, 1997 in close and open parentheses, then period, Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, that is the title of the book in italics, period, and the place and publisher which is London, Bloomsbury. Now, let us proceed to for the non-print sources. So the first one is for the printed sources. Now, for non-print sources or the books that you have found or sources that you have found on the internet, or it could be a PDF file, somewhere that you have found in the internet, or anything that is not physical copy or you don't hold it physically. So it is somehow similar to the format of the formatting of printed sources. However, at the very end of your reference list, you will add, if the work that you will cite is a non-print source, the only thing that you will add is the word retrieved from and the link. Where did you get that specific source? For example, so you can see here, it is somehow similar to the format for printed sources. However, at the very end, there is retrieved from and the link. Where did you get that specific source? And that is for the in-text citations and reference list. Again, we are doing this, even though it is somehow complicated for you to understand at your age, but it is necessary to do it, especially when you're conducting research. Again, the very purpose of doing this, the in-text citation and reference list, is to avoid plagiarism, and second is give credit to the author. Where did you get the source? Be mindful of the reasons why we are doing in-text citations and reference lists, because maybe you will find it at the exam. Who knows? Now, that is the very end of our discussion for today. If you have questions about our topic, don't hesitate to send me a message, or if you have something that boggles your mind about the topic, please don't hesitate to have a conversation with me. So I hope that you have learned something for today, and we will see each other next time around. So goodbye!